Now we're going to move to today's perspective and imagine a gender-equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes and discrimination, a world that is diverse, equitable and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Now those are the words, they're not mine, they're the aim expressed for this year's International Women's Day, which falls this Friday. Women across the planet, in most of the world's countries of course, facing specific daily problems. And joining me now here on set is Düzen Tekkal. She's a journalist, human rights activist and founder of the NGO HÁWAR, which aims, among other things, for the empowerment of women, children and minorities who are subject to religious, ethnic or gender-based persecution or discrimination. She also has a new book out talking to women and their situation in Iran. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But thanks very much for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, I wanted to talk about the origins of your charity and your work, which was to help Yazidi women, you as Yazidi yourself, fleeing from Iraq into Iraqi Kurdistan. This was with the rise of the Islamic State right back in 2014.
Yes, and I had to become a human rights activist because I'm a member of this religious minorities of the Yazidis, so our fight is going on for hundreds of centuries. But my life-changing moment for all Yazidis worldwide was 2014, when I left my secular life in Germany and went to a war in Syria and Iraq. And that was, of course, the captivity of ISIS. And yeah, that we felt as victims in captivity of this genocide. And there are still 2,700 women are missing, Yazidi women. And I'm very proud of the Yazidi women because they break the silence. They said that they are not victims anymore. They call themselves survivors. And this is the reason why the world recognized about the genocide, because that was not the first time that that was happening to us, but it was the first time that the world get known.
And you made a film while you were there, didn't you?
Yes.
You went there to do that initially. It's a very emotional film, isn't it? Which, you know, obviously at that time horrific conditions, as you were saying, for people.
Yeah, it's a film about our history, our faith, a story which no one was interested in, which was very silent, because we have been attacked since we exist and before that. And therefore, I think this was life-changing that we break the silence together. And of course, it changed my life. So I went there as a journalist, but I returned into a human rights activist overnight. And then we found out our NGO, HÁWAR, help out of the ashes of genocide. But I think it's about hope, it's about surviving, it's about resilience, and not just for our Yazidi women, for every woman. So we have our women life empowerment centers in Iraq, in Afghanistan, multi-religious, multi-ethnical, which is very important. And for me, it was always clear that our enemies are everywhere. We were surrounded by challenges, by the evil twins, as I describe it, from right-wing racism on the one hand, but also religious extremism. And I know that that was a big challenge, not just for Yazidis, for minorities in general, and also, of course, for Muslim people who are the biggest victims of Islamism and religious extremism. This is very important to speak out.
How are you able to help people? What physically are you actually able to do?
So what we try to do is to amplify the voices, but also in a judicial way. For example, the recognition of the genocide. So France, for example, was a forerunner. The parliament here in France recognized the genocide against the Yazidis in 2016. We are at the German Bundestag 1 year ago. But the situation is still very challenging for the Yazidi people. They feel disappear. We are just 1 million worldwide. We are really a minority in a minority. The half of them is living in diaspora, and the other one are living in IDP camps in Iraq. What we try to do is to give the women and men, we can't forget the men, especially on the Women's Day. I think we need strong men as well, like women, to give them space, to give them honor and opportunities and hope. So what many ISIS survivors say to us is, we don't need medicine, we are not ill, we need opportunities, we need a future, we want to stay here. And I think it's very dangerous when Christian life or Yazidi life is not possible anymore in the Middle East or in the global south. And I think, yeah, we can't look away. So we have many challenges and problems. Our victims are the victims of the world, I would say. And therefore, it's a common fight, as we can see.
It's incredible the way this has developed, hasn't it? Because as you said, you went there as a journalist. You turned it into, if you like, this organisation that helps Yazidi women, and now you've broadened it even further to other countries as well.
Yes, of course, and this is something what we always wanted to make clear, that we need answers here in the liberal Western countries, in the global North, and I think the solutions are in the global South. And of course, what happened on the 7th October is very dangerous, especially for the Jewish people. So the fact that in France Holocaust survivors have been killed shows us how many problems we have. We have about 25 to 30 anti-Semitic attacks a day in France. And on the other side, Islamophobia, which is also a big challenge. But we have to solve the problems. We have to talk about that there's a big difference between being a Muslim or religious extremism. But of course, this is a common fight, because I think this religious extremism is ideological. And this is something where we have to stand up for. And there was a big fear in the past, like, okay, we have to be very careful that we don't import extremism. But we export it. Let's talk about the foreign fighters in France, in Belgium, in Germany. People who was born and raised here and went to jihadism and killed innocent Yazidi women and sold them on slave markets. This is something which we have to be aware of. And for example, the fact that the 7th October was happening and the people are denying what happened at that time is a big problem for all of us, not just for Jewish people.
And it's great as well that you're talking, when you said men, but women in all these different groups, whether those two groups may be on completely opposite, opposing sides.
Of course, they are agents of change, and that was one of the main reasons why we became one of the biggest amplifier in Europe and Germany when this movement of Jinjian Azadi, Zanzendegi Azadi, Femme, Vie, Liberté begins, because je suis Kurd, je suis Yazidi, je suis une femme, and that means that Jinjian Azadi is a part of our origin identity, and that what is happening in Iran is a solution for all of us. It's, of course, on the other hand, very sad what is happening, but we have to talk about the responsibility of the Iranian regime, who is also responsible for the massacre together with Hamas and Hezbollah. So let's talk about the way how they are attacking the world, even their own civil society. In the last year, there have been about 800 people who have been beheaded there and killed in Iran. And this is something which we have to talk about it.
Let's talk about your book then. It's called Nous n'avons pas peur, 16 Iranian women telling their stories, if you like. Tell us how you were able to get them to talk to you and what they told you.
Yes, Iranian women, Kurdish women, Baluch women. So we have to give all of them a voice. And it's very important because the last 44 years, it was all about the narratives of the Mullah regime. And it's always like, okay, our society wants us. But that was the biggest lie. So look at this brave country and civil society who stand up for universal rights. This is not Western rights or Eastern rights. This is universal value-based rights. And they were ready to die for it, die for freedom. This is something which I well known from the Middle East, for example, and which we have to talk more about. And the women were so brave, women like Fariba Baluch, for example, from Baluchistan, and who was awarded a few days ago, or Ani, a Kurdish woman from Sakhes, the same city like Gina Massa Amini, who have been killed, and where the revolution begins. And of course, this is a very bloody place. So the Iranian regime is very brutal in attacking Kurdish lives when we see what is happening right now.
And do you see any way that the Iranian regime will back down, or any way that women will be able to have a more normal, we see as normal
this
life?
must be our common fight. We have to ask ourselves what we can do and on which side we would like to stay in history. This is really an important fight, because every woman and man who is standing up in Russia or in Middle East or in Iran is standing up for all of us. This is so important to understand that this is a common fight, and we have the same problem also here in Europe. It is not the way like we feel very secure and safe here. We have so many problems in our liberal Western countries, and of course our fight have to be against racism, anti-Semitism, Islamism and Islamophobia.
And in a country like Iran, how much can you actually do? Because obviously it's incredibly difficult for you to get direct access.
So this is not the question which I ask myself. So we know that to be part of freedom or a democracy, is nothing for granted. You have to fight for that. So when I talk about or think about the way how my parents and forefathers and grandmothers grow up, that was a life of surviving, not living. But the fact that we and my siblings were born and raised in Germany means to get a responsibility and a chance. It's not about us anymore. So we call it German Dream. We founded out a nationwide initiative, educational way, but it's like a European dream. And we have to fight for that, stand up for that, not just in an individual ego way, in a collective way. We need more visions, I would say, and more answers.
I feel like we could go on talking for another 10 minutes, but we've run out of time.
Thank you so
very
much.
much for
Thank
being
you.
with us on the programme. Düzen Tekkal, journalist, human rights activist, founder of the group. It's called HÁWAR, H-A-W-A-R. If you want to look it up online, you'll find out all the details of it. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us on the programme today.